So big shout out to them. This will be recorded and put on our website and our YouTube channel. So if you would like to rewatch it or if you'd like to share with friends, it should be up fairly soon on our YouTube and website. With that being said, I do have just a few announcements before I introduce our speaker. So I'll say some past things that we've done in February. February has been an eventful month at the Cape Fear River Watch. I definitely see some people I've seen out in the field, so thank you for all of the work that y'all have done. So in February, some of the things that have happened is on February 7th, Kemp and Rob met with UNCW, the City of Wilmington, CFCC, Marine Technology, and CPRO to discuss a harmful algal bloom mitigation plan for Greenfield Lake. On February 7th, I presented EnviroScape presentations to 56 students at Murray Middle School. On February 8th, this is a big day for us at the River Watch, we had 46 volunteers come out to a tree planting along Burmill Creek in Wilmington, just right here, very close to us. So we planted a total of 107 trees. So that brings the total up since 2023 to 115 volunteers planting 182 trees along Burmill Creek. So thank you all for your help. That's a big deal. Along with that, also, while that tree planting was going on, some of y'all may have been at our cleanup. So we also had a cleanup going in Burmill Creek at that time. At that cleanup, we had 27 volunteers that cleaned up over 900 pounds of litter from Burmill Creek watershed. So thank you all for all of the work that you all do. I am always looking for tree watering volunteers for those trees. So if anyone is interested in tree watering, please see me after the seminar. I'd love to talk to you some more about that. So a few more things that have happened. So on February 24th, a volunteer, Ryan, and I collected 105 pieces of litter from 2 of our garbage gobblers in Burntmill Creek. So this totaled 93% of what was collected was plastic. Some other things. On February 25th, I presented EnviroScapes to Glow Academy students. On February 27th, Rob and I did a program with YSA where we did some nature journaling and had some students over here doing some water quality testing in our lab. On February 28th, so it's been a very busy week, we had our Burntmill Creek Eco Tour. So that went really well. If you're interested in that and have not been to one, we'll have some more coming up on our calendar and on our socials, so definitely look out for those. And then today from 10 to noon, so right after the seminar, if you're interested, Dana, our executive director, is a panelist at Warner Temple AME Zion Church. I believe that's off 7th Street. And she will be talking about PFAS and PFAS levels in our blood with the community members. And that's with the Gen X exposure research team. So if you're interested in that, I can tell you the location after the seminar again. Again, that was Warner Temple, and that's from 10 to noon today. So if you're interested after this, to head on over to that. But thank you for bearing with me. A few upcoming things, and then we'll get to our speaker today. So on March 8th, next Saturday, we'll have our second Saturday cleanup. That'll take place in the Greenfield Lake watershed. So information will be on our website under our calendar for that if you're interested. On March 11th, Going Green Environmental Book Club is meeting at Old Books on Front Street from 6 to 8. The book this month is Nature's Best Hope by Doug Tallamy. I believe it was the Arboretum has been giving that out for free to folks. So hopefully some of y'all have been able to get that book. If not, definitely check into that. That should be a good book club meeting. And then the last thing is that our boathouse is going to remain on winter hours for the time being. So that just means weekends only from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., 3 p.m. being the last rental that's going out. And so the only time we'd be closed is if the weather is under 50 degrees or it's too windy or rainy. So with that, if you're looking to get outside, that's a fun place to go out to Greenfield Lake and get outside. For today, this is a free event. I hope you all got some pancakes. We still have a lot of pancakes left, so please, please, please eat some more pancakes or take some with you when you're heading out. But being a free event, if you are able to donate, it helps us just be able to keep the event going with the cost of providing pancakes for everyone and all. So there are some little donation bins back there. And with that, thank you for bearing with me through all of those announcements. Again, this is being recorded if you're interested in reviewing or sharing with folks. So today we have Elly Cowell. She serves as the executive director of the Rise Up Community Farm. She first came to Wilmington area in 2013 and has been involved in community agriculture since 2020. She earned both her undergraduate and graduate degrees from UNCW, studying English, French, and creative writing. She is passionate about creating a more equitable community in Wilmington where all people have access to healthy foods and the resources to provide for themselves and their neighbors. So with all of that, I will turn it over to Elly.
Good morning, y'all, and thanks, Savannah and the River Watch. This is such a treat to get to be here with y'all. I've always really admired the work that the River Watch does to keep our community safe and healthy, so really grateful for the chance to be here. I will say my voice, I tend to be on the soft-spoken side, so if y'all can't hear me in the back and you want to just give me a thumbs up, I see one already. I'll try and elevate. So we'll work with that a little bit. So I'm excited to talk with y'all today about regenerative agriculture. I do work for Rise Up Community Farm, so I'll share a little bit about what our organization does because it is a local nonprofit that y'all can be connected to if you have a passion for these things. But before I kind of hop in, I always like to know a little bit about who I'm talking to, because if y'all are farmers or if you've never planted anything before, this conversation could be pretty different. So do I have any farmers, anyone who's been a farmer before in the room? A couple, cool, look at y'all.
And I'm kind of more into the permaculture gardening. I'm starting one in my place.
Awesome, very cool.
But not a farmer.
Very cool. Gardening and farming, they kind of very close, a little different. Any pro gardeners out there been doing it for a long time?
Not pro, but I've been doing it a while.
Been doing it a while? Cool, that's awesome. And anyone who's never grown a vegetable before, don't be shy. Cool, awesome. Because part of my passion and excitement in life is encouraging folks to learn more and try these things if you haven't tried it before, because there's nothing better than just putting a seed in the soil and seeing what happens, right? So these are some photos from Rise Up. We have my coworker Mariella there. She's our farm manager and our favorite farm kid, Leona, there with her. And this is my favorite farm crop, okra. Very special spot in my heart with one of our volunteers harvesting there. So today I'm going to be sharing with you about some different elements of regenerative farming and why I really believe that is nourishing for our community. But to give context, I wanted to share about Rise Up and the work that we do so that you can understand kind of where my background is coming from in that. So at Rise Up, our mission is to cultivate, educate, nourish, and empower. This is a portion of the farm kind of at the end of summer last year, so we've got some beds that are in transition there. We're located in the Monkey Junction area in town behind a little church. And so the way that our mission kind of plays out to cultivate land and community, we're really passionate about making sure that everything we're doing in the soil and in the environment is feeding both the critters and the insects and things that are around, and also creating healthy spaces for adults and kids to be around, right? We don't want to be putting anything toxic in the soil that might be scary for our bodies if we're working in the soil or consuming the produce that comes from the fields. We also really believe that working together in the fields is such a gift, and to build community and kind of have that opportunity to work together can really transform lives and allow people to feel like they have a connection in a way to give back to their community. So whether that's adults coming to volunteer throughout the week or kiddos learning how to use a broad fork and dig up potatoes, it just is pretty exciting to be part of. And in that, we also try and educate with everything that we do so that everyone who comes out to the farm is learning something, whether it's best practices for how to weed or how seeds germinate in the soil, what they need, right? They need water, they need warmth. Once they start growing, they need a little bit of sun. So as we work with youth and adults, we're always trying to teach them through every practice, kind of best practice that we have for how to create a healthy crop and healthy land. Nourish, that side of our mission, is a huge part of our heart. So we have over 30,000 people in our community here in New Hanover County who experience food insecurity on a regular basis. So what that means is they might not know where their next meal is coming from. They might be looking for resources on a daily or weekly basis to help supplement with dietary needs for their family. And a large portion of the folks in our community who experience food insecurity are the youth and the elderly. So folks that we just have a pretty strong heart for making sure they get cared for. And so on site here, I guess if I go back, you could see it. We are located on site at a church, as I mentioned, and they have a food pantry every week called House of Mercy. So on Wednesdays, we harvest from the field, and then wash everything, package it, make sure it's nice and fresh for folks. And then on Thursday mornings, when people come and kind of line up for their box of assorted food items, they also get their choice of usually 2 or 3 fresh vegetables that they'd like. And it's a pretty fun way to get to build community because our volunteers get to talk with them and kind of learn about what they like to grow and eat also. So that's pretty fun. The community that we serve there in Monkey Junction is a lot of elderly folks, and we also have the gift of serving a lot of immigrant families, both of whom really have a passion for, as a general demographic, for gardening and growing food. So it's really sweet to get to provide that assistance for them. We do also sell a portion of our produce. We have some farm share subscribers here, which is so sweet. So another portion of what we grow is then sold into the community where folks can purchase vegetables and have a weekly supply of fresh goodies from the fields. And then Empower, we like to work with kids. So here we've got some students from our partnership with El Cuerpo, which is a nonprofit that serves the Hispanic population kind of in the Monkey Junction, Carolina Beach Road area. And the kiddos here go to tutoring after school every day, but y'all know sitting in a chair like this is hard enough for an hour. Shoot! Y'all making these kids sit in chairs at tables all day in school, and then they go to tutoring. So El Cuerpo was like, we got to give these kids something fun to do every once in a while. So on Wednesdays, right now it's once a month, sometimes it's twice a month, they come to us and they learn a little bit about gardening, cooking. Last week we were making little green onion pancakes. Have y'all ever had those before with them? That was pretty fun. So that's a treat, and kind of the goal with anything we do with kids is to empower them.
What do you say? El what? What's this last word?
El Cuerpo. It means the body. The body, I believe, in Spanish.
C-U-E-R-P-O.
Yeah.
E-R-P-O.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank
Yeah.
you.
And that organization is amazing if y'all are interested in getting connected. They provide a wide array of services for families in the area, including like health and wellness, doctor's visits, and just community resources, ESL classes. So pretty cool partnership that we get to do. We also partner with other organizations like Cape Fear River Watch came out with their summer youth camp last summer, and the kids learned a little bit about composting. We looked at sand and talked about how the sand all of a sudden, 5 years down the road after we've been farming now looks like beautiful, dark, rich soil, and what that takes to kind of build. And they helped paint our little compost bin, so it always makes me happy to walk in the morning and see some River Watch kid artwork. So that's a little bit about the farm. If y'all have questions at the end and you want to ask about what we do, I'm happy to share. Obviously, we are always looking to build community and have more folks be involved in what we do, so we'd love to connect with you. But that's kind of just a segue into what I wanted to talk about today, which is how regenerative agriculture can build healthy communities, kind of in 4 pillars: through ecological health and diversity, physical health for us, social connection, and then just community resiliency, specifically like in times of emergencies and kind of as our world is becoming a little less stable. So I thought we could start with ecological health and diversity, especially since we're at the Riverwatch. How many of y'all have read Braiding Sweetgrass? It's so famous. Okay, cool. So I picked this book up a couple years ago, and as I was reading the introduction to it, I was very struck by this comment that Robin Wall Kimmerer included, which is to talk about the way that we as humans perceive our connection with the environment. So I'm not going to read this whole thing for y'all, but she's kind of highlighting that in her, environmental education courses, she was asking students how they perceive humans' interaction with the natural world, whether that's a positive relationship, kind of a symbiotic relationship, or a negative one. And she was struck by that response. What would y'all say? Who would say that humans have a positive impact on the environment? Nobody?
Well, it's both. It can be both. There are both aspects.
It can be both, yeah.
Depends on the person. Developers definitely not.
We all have different levels of impact, that is true. But what she says here is, later in the survey, they were asked to rate their knowledge of positive interactions between people and the land. The median response was none. And she kind of talks about, for her, coming from an indigenous background, how different that is from the way that she was raised in her background. And let's see. She says here, I realized that they, the students, could not even imagine what beneficial relationships between their species and others might look like. How can we begin to move toward ecological and cultural sustainability if we cannot even imagine what the path feels like? So something that I really love about regenerative farming is that in a world where we have so many environmental issues and struggles, having a way to work in the soil that you can really tangibly see the ways that your efforts and the efforts of your neighbors are building resiliency and health in the soil and the environment is such an encouragement and gift in a world where we really need some hope when we look at our natural world. So that's kind of the passion for me behind that, which leads me into what is regenerative agriculture. Have y'all, raise your hand if you've heard that term before, regenerative ag. Okay, cool. A lot of times folks are like, what does that mean? Because we're used to going to the grocery store and we have vegetables that don't have a label and then vegetables that say organic, right? And so that's kind of our two camps that we live in. The reality is for farmers, it's kind of a scale, and also to have that label of organic is a pretty expensive process to get that certification that doesn't always translate into an understanding of what kind of practices are happening on site. So this word, regenerative ag, is something that we're seeing more and more come up, something that we at Rise Up strive to incorporate into all of our practices as best we can. So regenerative agriculture improves soil health primarily through practices that increase soil organic matter. This not only aids in increasing soil biodiversity and health, but also increases biodiversity both above and below the soil surface, while increasing both water holding capacity and sequestering carbon at greater depths, thus drawing down climate damaging levels of atmospheric CO2 and improving soil structure to reverse civilization threatening human-caused soil loss. So I kind of highlighted there, we're improving soil health, improving soil organic matter, with the intent to increase biodiversity and water retention while also sequestering carbon. So y'all know that agriculture is one of the most polluting forces that we have in our society. It's pretty beautiful that there are ways that we can provide food for ourselves that don't destroy the environment in kind of the way that conventional large-scale ag has in the past. So pretty exciting to have a way forward. Again, in layman's terms, that means that we're growing with the intent to nourish the land rather than simply take from it. So having that perspective that Robin Wall Kimmerer shared of not only just taking, not only just giving, but having a back and forth, right? Caring for the land so that it can continue to care for us. Doing so with future generations in mind. And it's been really interesting working on the same plot of land for a couple years, watching things like, this is I believe a swallowtail. One of y'all butterfly experts can tell me if I'm wrong.
Eastern tiger swallowtail, male.
Perfect. See, look at you. Ow, ow. Over the last few years, we've seen a really strong increase in our pollinators. Lots of butterflies and bees around, starting to kind of watch the little worm piles show up in different areas around the farm and seeing just that richness come back to soil that previously, had not really had that diversity, has been such a gift. Let's see. So in practice, what some of this regenerative farming looks like for us and for others is incorporating some of these different methods I've listed there. Cover cropping is a huge part of what we do. So if y'all aren't familiar with cover crop, this picture here is a image of what I would consider a winter cover crop blend would look like. So what that means, what you're looking at here is a mix of, there's some hairy vetch there, some crimson clover, we've got winter rye growing there. For us, we like to also plant some peas in there, which I don't see in that picture, but people often put that into a winter mix. And the idea with a cover crop is that it is a crop, it's something that you sow, you cultivate, you care for, but it's not something that you're intending to harvest and distribute and eat, right? You're planting this with the intention being to care for the soil, to protect it, to maintain the nutrients and longevity of it so that you can have, further crops be successful and full of nutrients. So to kind of dive into that a little bit, just because I think it's so cool, what we kind of think about every time that we finish a row, say we've been growing tomatoes all summer and all of a sudden it's about time for frost, we like to try and milk them till Thanksgiving, right? And then you're like, okay, these things are huge, they're 15 feet tall and scraggly, we got to get them out of here. Those tomatoes have been growing since April and it's now November. Shoot, right? And they grew a ton. They're so tall and they have so many tomatoes that they've grown, hundreds of pounds over a couple months. And that biomass we know doesn't come from, nowhere. It's taken nutrients from the soil. So nitrogen is a really big one that crops need to kind of grow their strength and produce fruit. And so nitrogen is an element that is also really cool because you can plant something, a legume like clover or peas, and what they do is they take their little green bodies and they trap nitrogen from the air, and then they kind of store it in their whole plant body, put it in their roots, and then they just leave it in their roots. That's crazy. Then you come and mow it, right? And where's the nitrogen? It's in the soil, ready for whatever you want to plant next year, brassicas, cabbage, whatever, to have the nutrients that they need. So when we're planting a cover crop, we might plant something like that to fix nitrogen in the soil. We might plant something like this rye, which has a really strong root system. At the farm, something that I've watched happen many times is we'll get the soil ready to plant, maybe we'll even get seeds in, and then a huge rain comes, right? And all of a sudden this dark, rich soil that we've built up for 5 years looks like sand because of erosion, right? So having bare soil out there is something that you want to avoid in your garden or your farm kind of at any cost. So we'll plant something like this rye, which has a really strong root system so that it really kind of holds everything in place throughout the winter. And then when it's time to mow it, we have, depending on the height, maybe you've got ryegrass about this high or, sometimes even waist high that you can mow, and then it'll break down and add green manure right into your soil, right? You're actively building that soil up for upcoming seasons. So that's kind of a fun thing we like to incorporate in, and it's been really fun just to see the way that that has built up resiliency and strength in our soil over time. I always like to preface this by saying, if you get really jazzed about cover cropping and you want to try it at home, stoked for you, do it. But make sure you know how to kill it. You have a really good plan, right? Because all of a sudden, if it's March and your field still looks like this, dang, right? You could have a real problem. And you want to make sure that any way you're terminating it is not negating the benefits that you've put into the soil by planting that cover crop. So super important and helpful method. You just need to do your research and maybe ask some advice before starting it. We also incorporate natural amendments into our soil. Things like compost obviously is a really big one. I also love fish emulsion. Have any of y'all worked with fish emulsion before?
Where do you get it?
Where do we get it? That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked. We used to buy it for like $50 for a gallon. And I was like, are you kidding me? We are in a coastal community. I got fish everywhere. Why am I paying $50 for fish when we have it everywhere? So
That stuff, but it stinks, so I banned it from the kitchen.
yeah. So anyway, my nerdy little project last year was to think about how can we make our own fish emulsion, and we got some inspiration from Korean natural farming that some community members we have who have worked on a farm in Hawaii shared with us. So we started this process of taking fish guts. So we've got kind of a partnership with some folks who have fish scraps from local research and also just local fishing operations. And we layer that in 5-gallon buckets. Here we were doing a little experiment with some kids, teaching them how to do it in small containers. We don't really go through cutting all those fish guts up on a daily basis, but kind of layer fish scraps of any kind with brown sugar equal parts, and then we put it away to ferment for 3 to 6 months.
Fish wine.
Fish wine, yeah. It's also like pretty much the exact same thing as fish sauce, just, not food grade. But at the end, at 6 months, you open that thing and you kind of want to eat it. It smells good. It's crazy. You don't believe me, but it's true. I don't think Amy really agreed with me because she's, head to toe in her rain gear spreading it. But that's been really fun for us to learn about and think about, okay, how do we utilize the resources we have here in our community that A, are cost effective, B, don't require tons of transportation and packaging and manufacturing to create, and C, are available at any time if we want to feed our soil, right? So pretty excited about that. Again, I mentioned that's a Korean natural farming method. There's lots of other ways that we are excited about trying to incorporate some of those practices into our growing routine. You can do things like take little baby plants that have, the nutrients and richness of a full plant in a sprout, kind of like why we eat microgreens, some of us. And you can actually ferment those tiny little sprouts to create a really rich nutrient for your soil also. We do add things like minerals, things like blood meal, feather meal when we plant, more standard resources for feeding your soil. Yeah, question?
So did the fish emulsion attract raccoons and possums and draw them to your garden?
That's a great question.
Have them discover your garden?
As far as I know, no, thankfully. Somehow we are very lucky that we don't have tons of critters, this size coming around. We do have bunnies, and starting last year we had some voles, so maybe the voles liked it, I don't know, because they were new last year, but if you keep it layered, like really covered with brown sugar, it shouldn't be too nasty attracting stuff, which is kind of crazy. Because I don't even keep it sealed, we just keep it behind the cooler and kind of let, it needs to breathe a little bit, so no huge problem with that so far.
So you're just putting it in a sheetrock mud bucket and layering it?
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
taking the top off and nothing comes?
I just crack it.
Oh, okay.
Crack it. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna find, I've found some little friends in there, some maggots and stuff like that, but yeah, nothing crazy. Otherwise, for us, regenerative farming looks a lot like reduced till. Some people do no-till. We often still, if we are, we're a nonprofit, sometimes we're flying by the seat of our pants, right? We don't always have time to plan as thoroughly as we would like. So, for instance, I'm starting a new little plot right now, and I'm really wishing that in October when we started thinking about this, I knew where I wanted my bed to go, and I could have tarped it, but I didn't know, and now I want to plant it. So we are going to get a tiller out there and till, but we won't till ever again after opening that bed. Some folks, and I really believe there's strength in this, would not even till to open that bed. They'd prefer to solarize, put a tarp out. Really just trying to decrease as much as possible the ways that we are incorporating sharp tools and machinery into the soil that can kind of, disturb the critters that are down there and the root structures, because there's strength in keeping that system as strong as it is. And again, no to reduced chemical input. We are lucky in that we're not, relying on our livelihood for these crops. So we do, hold pretty strictly to not utilizing chemicals in the field. Some folks in regenerative farming, might use it in case-by-case basis if they really need to, but really trying to work with natural processes to do that. Yeah.
When you're amending soil with your compost and fish emulsion and that sort of thing, still no tilling? You just lay it on top, or how does that work?
That's a great question. Yeah, we still don't till. We do. If I go back, this little thing right here that she's got, a pitchfork, we like to call them a broad fork. It's not actually. A broad fork's really big. But we'll use that to aerate our soil and kind of like mix things in a little bit, but it's not as hard on the soil as a tiller. But some folks do still till to incorporate that. It's kind of like each farmer has their own set of values and practices based on what they're working with. So we have tons of little kids with pitchforks, so why would we use a tiller, But not every farmer has tons of little kids with pitchforks, so then they want to use a tiller. Yeah.
How do you kill your cover crop?
That's a great question. My favorite way to kill it is to mow it and then put a tarp on it. That allows the root structure, like I was telling you with the nitrogen being in the roots, shoot, you don't want to be pulling those roots out, right? Which is a mistake I've made in the past. So that's kind of my favorite way to do it. If you live in a colder climate, some climates, things just die in the winter and then it's dead. But here, that's not really the case. So that's been the best method that we have found. Yeah?
Have you found that your practices produce more nutrient-dense food? Sometimes I see, I volunteered at another farm at Willowdale.
I knew I recognized you from Willowdale.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It's super interesting. But one of the things that we found is while we're growing, we need to improve our soil, and we're finding that what we're growing is probably not as nutrient dense as it should be because the soil is not as healthy. So you're further ahead in the practices of remediation, I think, than where we are. And so I was just curious if you've been able to see that benefit.
That's a great question. We don't have any way of actually testing that to have concrete data, but when we look at, that's something I wanted to talk about a little further on, which maybe I'll just hop there now since you asked.
You don't have to.
No, it's okay. It works just fine, yeah. So we don't have a way of testing it, but when we look at the research for what causes insufficient nutrients in vegetables, it kind of correlates that, for me, logic-wise would tell me that our produce is higher in nutrients than something at a grocery store, and it also just tastes better, right? When things have good nutrients, you can usually taste it, and that is true. So I was doing some research this week and found this article from the U.S. National Institute of Health that kind of outlined this issue, and it says, since the 1940s, crop yield and the per capita availability of foods have been continuously increasing due to intensive farming techniques, artificial fertilization, pesticides, irrigation, growing high-yielding varieties, and other environmental means. Whereas malnutrition tends to increase incessantly due to disrupting the fine balance of soil life and decrease the nutritional density and quality of the food crops. At present, people are overfed but undernourished due to consuming nutrient-poor diets. So if we look at those things, right, it's saying that this issue is being caused by intensive farming, artificial fertilization, pesticides, irrigation, so overwatering, growing high yield varieties. All those things are things that when you're farming regeneratively, you're doing the opposite, right? And so I wish I could tell you that we had stats on that, but that I'm not a scientist. If y'all heard my introduction, I like languages and growing food. So data and things like that is something where I would love if we had that available, but it's not really something I could speak to, with concrete data. But I can tell you that the food tastes better and we feel better when we eat, fresh organic foods. And so that's one element of kind of physical health that can be reclaimed by doing this kind of gardening, is when we eat it, what is going into our bodies. And I feel really passionate about the way that for us with our organization, we have the opportunity to provide that just quality nutrient-rich food to folks of, wide different demographics where people don't have to pay, exorbitant prices to get good quality food with us. But there's also benefits for physical health in doing the work itself. So this is a photo from a couple weeks ago on our second Saturday event in February. We had a bunch of kids and adults out there helping clear an area. We had our old collards and kale planted in this area, and we wanted to plant it in a cover crop to rest for the spring. So you can see all these humans' bodies, right? They're moving in all kinds of ways. Often with regenerative farming, you'll see a low use of machinery. For us, it's also an element of if we have a tractor and it breaks, all of a sudden we have to know how to fix it. I'm also not a mechanic. I can't fix a tractor. I can fix a little hand tool if it breaks, So we try and utilize, body power, hand tools, things like that, so that we can participate actively in the growing process and also have resiliency and not being dependent on tools we can't fix. Also very helpful in exposure to sunshine and interacting with the skin, getting some dirt under your fingernails, right? It's good for us. We know that. We have research that shows that being part of nature and letting your body interact with the physical elements can improve mood and health and all those things.
How many acres do you have?
That's a great question. We have one. So it's small.
Okay.
That is a great question. We have 1 acre, yeah. So if you're looking at farms that use especially low machinery, usually you're going to be looking at pretty small scale, like maybe 1 or 2. One keeps us pretty busy. I wouldn't really want a second. Yeah.
So from your acre, what do you all typically yield in a year? Do you have any numbers?
Yeah, that's a great question. On an average year, we yield about 7,000 pounds of produce.
Wow.
Yeah. Kind of depends how intensive we want to go. Last year, we were trying to rest a little bit and kind of get our feet under us. So I think we grew 5,000 pounds last year, but most years it's closer to 7 or 8.
How many people who work there are actually paid?
Mhm.
Boy, I hope you are.
Great question. I am, yeah. So we have a small team. Last year we had, 2 mostly full-time staff, myself and our farm manager. We just had the opportunity to hire an assistant, so we kind of decided there's resilience also in numbers, so we kind of went part-time and added a 3rd person who's brilliant and lovely, so we're grateful to have her. Otherwise, tons of volunteer hours every year, so yeah, but great question. Talked about nutrient density. Also wanted to talk a little bit about social connection. So I mentioned that at the start, but just having the opportunity to work alongside folks. When you're gardening, how many of y'all have pulled weeds for hours on end? It keeps your hands busy, but it doesn't keep your mouth busy or your brain, right? And so that's where getting to talk to folks and build relationships and learn alongside each other is huge. So that's something that for our organization I really love, because that's an integral part of our mission, is creating that space for folks. But even if you're working on a small scale farm that's not, a nonprofit community organization, or if you're growing a garden in your backyard or things like that, you're still creating space for increased social connection with your community. I don't think I've ever met a gardener who hasn't shared plants and harvest with the people around them, right? Like, what a gift. I feel like so many times in our world I catch myself thinking from a mindset of a lack, right? We don't have enough of things. You start working in a garden, shoot, you might not always have enough, but all of a sudden you're gonna have tons of cucumbers, right? And you're like, I literally don't want to pickle anymore, so I need y'all to take some of these. And that's such a gift to have that abundance, to come and ebb and flow and be able to share together. Also, if you're working outside, people are likely gonna be coming by. It's a great chance to kind of connect with the people in your community, or go to a farmer's market. I'm sure most of y'all are familiar that we have a farmer's market in Wilmington. It's amazing, the Wilmington Farmer's Market. I think they're also opening an evening market this year, so check that out. Incredible resource, and we need to keep that strong to support our local farmers because they are awesome and need our support. And community resilience. So a strong community, from my perspective, with a food system holds the knowledge and resources to produce and distribute food locally. Y'all know with COVID and also the bird flu, right? Like we see these things where all of a sudden we're like, this is crazy the way our food system works. We don't have enough local foods being produced to where we can take care of our families and our neighbors. And so anything we can do to build that system up so that if something happens that disrupts the, supply chain, things like that, to where we still have food in our community makes us a stronger community. Having education around that is huge, which means that if you know something, you're sharing it with the little ones in your life and with your neighbors, right? Like just trying to educate and share what we know. Things like seed saving, a knowledge of local resources as soil amendments allows us to continue our gardens and growing operations, even if resources at different times are hard to come by. Being able to use what you have around you physically to feed your soil is huge. And then, thank God for the River Watch and other organizations, protection and sustainable use of our local lands and natural resources is huge too. So making sure that we still have green spaces that we can use for providing for ourselves and our families is huge. So how to take action and get involved. You could start a garden. You could get a little pot. You could start a little plot. And if you're not ready to do that, purchasing from local farmers and suppliers in this community, we definitely have some good, strong local farmers at the Wilmington Farmers Market, some other places. Also local fish, right? Like making sure that we're getting our food supplies from local good folks. You could join a community garden or farm. We are very blessed to have a few in our community, so Willowdale is another great one. And there are other smaller gardens and things going on in different neighborhoods, so finding something that's close to you that you can be part of would be awesome. Learning more about natural inputs if you're currently gardening but kind of want to build up that resiliency, that would be a great way to do it. And then again, sharing your knowledge with the folks around you. If you're interested in getting involved at Rise Up, kind of the easiest ways to get involved would be to volunteer weekly right now. It kind of changes seasonally, but right now we take volunteers on Wednesday and Thursday mornings. We're doing a lot of planting right now. Shortly we'll transition into harvesting also at that time. I forgot that y'all at the River Watch also have second Saturday work days, so I'm not going to steal you all from that. But we do have our Saturday work days usually on the second Saturday of the month. And we also take groups, so if you have a group of friends, maybe coworkers, community of faith that wants to come out, we love having groups come and volunteer one time and get connected is awesome. You can also follow our newsletter, which you can find on our website or social media for updates. We started doing workshops like that fish emulsion project where you saw those people cutting up fish. It's just fun doing stuff like that. So we are doing more of those and we'll kind of update you. Yeah?
What are the typical hours on your second Saturday?
That's a great question. We start at 8:30 and kind of do a tour and spiel. You'll kind of know a little bit of their spiel because you're sitting here for my long spiel. And then we work from 9 to 11 usually. Mm-hmm. And signups for all that are on our website also.
On the Tuesdays, Wednesday and Thursday morning,
Uh-huh.
morning hours.
Right now we're doing 9 to 11:30, but shortly they will go earlier because it gets hot.
But is it okay to come later?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Some people come for an hour, some people come, and then we're like, you don't have to be here all day. But they like being here, so, which is sweet. And then otherwise, we are almost entirely funded by individual donations and groups. We do get some small grants also from different folks like the Master Gardeners in town, and also the Cape Fear Garden Club is a huge supporter. But otherwise, we're just funded by local people, businesses, and places of worship. So if you have folks that you think would want to help support, that would be awesome. Do y'all have any questions for me? Yeah.
You know, you talked about Willdale. I live around the corner from Willdale.
Cool.
Have you thought about actually, you know, merging, like kind of combining efforts with the other farms? You know, so if your land needs to rest, then Willdale and other ones might, you know, have a bigger year. Have you thought
That
of something
makes
like
sense. Yeah. I often think that it just makes our community stronger when folks work together, right, all the time. So I'm really grateful that the leadership at Willowdale and other farms, like, we're always sharing ideas and plants and things that we have like that. I think we would all be sad to put our gardens to rest for so long. I like letting a little
Well, just
field
like
rest.
Because you're right,
But
sometimes if you combine and conquer, you can actually get a lot more variety.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, but any chance that we get to work together is a gift, and we're really grateful that we have that community perspective in our town where people want to help each other and share. Yeah.
When you say Wilmington Farmers Market, I'm gonna show my ignorance. Are you talking about like the Saturday stuff downtown, or is there something
That's a
else?
great question. I wasn't, but there is that market also. But there's one at Tidal Creek called the
Oh, that-
Wilmington
okay.
Farmers
Is that-
Market.
What day of the week is that?
It is Saturdays.
Okay.
I think it starts at 8. Do y'all know?
It is
8. But they are starting an evening, I believe, on Tuesdays. Maybe starting in March or April. Yes.
Where are any of your products available?
That's a great question. We do prioritize donations, so mostly they go to our food pantry partners on a weekly basis. That's House of Mercy Food Pantry, and then we kind of just share the love with other folks as we have excess. Otherwise, usually it's through our farm share program. So that runs like a community supported ag, which means that people commit to purchase vegetables for the season and come on a weekly basis. They get an assortment of vegetables and herbs, and we get to choose whatever we put in it. So they have to be adventurous and willing to try it. So that's primary. Occasionally we'll sell to like Tidal Creek, or we've done Veggie Wagon, or some restaurants. If we all of a sudden have like tons of Swiss chard that nobody seems to want, we'll do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have a question about earthworms.
Okay.
You mentioned that critters were starting to show up.
Yeah.
And I dig my worms from Greenfield Lake.
Cool.
But I was wondering, did your worms just show up, or did you have to
Bring them in? We did not bring them in, so they just showed up, I guess.
Okay.
Yep. Unless somebody else came and brought us some earthworms. Well, I wasn't watching. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you guys kind of worked with a farm in Hawaii. I was
Uh-huh.
just curious if there's any other like far out farms out there, like in other states that you like learned from or like have talked to before.
That's a good question. It's nothing like formal, but just this is farmers like to talk. We like to learn things from each other. So we oddly have like 3 people in our Rise Up community that worked at the same farm in Hawaii. But then we have other resources also. My sister does some urban agriculture in Dallas, so we like to swap ideas. And then we have connections in Louisiana and some other places like that. But it's just informal, people sharing ideas. Yeah.